What if I told you that the greatest test of your strength is not found in the battles you fight in the world, but in the silence you face when you are all alone? That the real measure of who you are is revealed not when the crowd is cheering for you, but when there is no one around to notice, no one to applaud, no one to judge. Solitude is not emptiness. It is the arena where your true self steps forward, and only those who dare to enter it discover what they are really made of. People are conditioned to believe that strength only comes from visible action, from physical training, from winning arguments in the boardroom, from victories on the battlefield, or from moments that draw the recognition of others. But the truth is far more challenging than that. Real strength is not the kind that others can see, cheer for, or validate. It is not something that can be measured by trophies, applause, or headlines. Real strength is forged in silence, in the unseen hours when no one is around to clap, encourage, or notice. It's in the stillness when the world is asleep and you are left alone with your thoughts that the ultimate test begins. Solitude strips away the layers of performance and leaves you with nothing but yourself. No mask, no performance, no audience, just raw reality. That is the place where strength is born. When there is no applause, you begin to realize how much of your identity has been built on other people's approval. We live in a culture that constantly rewards visibility, that praises achievements publicly, that celebrates success only when it's displayed in front of a crowd. But in solitude, all of that is gone. There is no stage, no spotlight, no validation. And that is why it is so difficult, because you are left to ask yourself the most terrifying question. Who am I when no one is watching? That question alone has broken more people than failure ever has, because most people have built their lives around what others see, not who they truly are. Strength in silence is different from strength in noise. In noise, strength is often about dominance, about proving yourself, about standing taller than the next person. But in silence, strength is about endurance, about sitting with the weight of your own thoughts without crumbling, about facing your insecurities without distraction. In silence, you cannot hide. You cannot drown yourself in entertainment or validation. You cannot cover the cracks with applause. Silence makes you face the parts of yourself you've been running from, and that confrontation is the crucible of true strength. The reason solitude is the ultimate test is because it demands self-respect without external reinforcement. In the gym, the weights will respond to your effort. The mirror will reflect your progress. In the boardroom, others will recognize your ideas or dismiss them. On the battlefield, the outcome is visible. You either win or lose. But in solitude, there are no external scoreboards. The only measure of progress is how honest you can be with yourself, how much you can resist the urge to escape, how deeply you can dive into your own mind without breaking. That is the kind of strength that cannot be faked. It is not performative. It is not for show. It is the strength of character, the kind that remains unshaken when everything else falls apart. Solitude teaches you discipline because there is no one there to hold you accountable. Anyone can work hard when eyes are on them, when they know they will be rewarded or punished for their actions. But when you are alone, when nobody knows whether you wake up early or sleep all day, whether you practice your craft or waste time, that is when discipline is truly tested. To do the right thing when no one is watching, that is strength. To hold yourself to the highest standard without the fear of judgment or the hope of praise, that is strength. And the silence exposes whether you have it or not. The paradox is that silence is both the easiest and hardest place to be. Easy, because it requires nothing external. You don't need money, status, or resources to be alone. Hard, because it forces you to carry the full weight of who you are without the distractions of noise. That is why so many avoid it. They fill their days with endless noise, with chatter, with scrolling, with superficial busyness. They would rather drown in distraction than face the terrifying emptiness of solitude. But those who lean into the silence, who accept its difficulty and endure it, discover a strength that outlasts any applause. They learn to walk into the world no longer needing the approval of others, because they have faced themselves and survived. And so, real strength is not forged where the world can see it. Real strength is created in that invisible space where no applause will ever reach, in those unseen battles between you and your reflection. That is where character is built. That is where courage is tested. That is where the ultimate measure of strength is found. In silence, in solitude, in the moments when you are truly alone with yourself. Most people carry an unspoken fear that eats away at them quietly. And that fear is the thought of being left alone with nothing but their own mind. They do everything they can to avoid it. They run into crowds, they surround themselves with noise, they keep the television running even when they're not watching. They scroll endlessly through feeds that mean nothing, and they talk for the sake of talking just to drown out the silence that unsettles them. Solitude is not what they fear on the surface. What they fear is the confrontation that comes with solitude. When you are stripped of company and distraction, you are forced to deal with yourself, and that is something most people are not ready for. It's easier to hide behind others than to face the voice inside your own head. This fear of solitude reveals how fragile most people's sense of self really is. If they were confident in who they are, silence wouldn't scare them. If they had built their foundation on self-awareness and strength of character, solitude would not feel like a threat. But because they've built their lives around external validation, they rely on others to tell them who they are, what they're worth, and whether they matter. When those voices disappear, they no longer know themselves. That is why solitude feels terrifying. It strips away the illusions people used to survive in the world and forces them to meet the raw, unfiltered truth about who they are. People run to noise not because they love it, but because they fear what happens without it. A crowded room may not bring peace, but it keeps the silence away. A busy schedule may not bring fulfillment, but it keeps the questions buried. Distractions provide a shield, a defense mechanism against the uncomfortable reality that most people have never built a strong relationship with themselves. They are strangers in their own skin. They know how to please others, how to entertain others, how to impress others, but when left alone, they don't know how to exist. They mistake solitude for punishment because they have never learned that solitude can be the greatest teacher. The truth is, solitude is neutral. It is neither good nor bad on its own. What makes it frightening for many is the state of their own inner world. If you carry unresolved pain, solitude will bring it to the surface. If you've built your life around pretending, solitude will strip away the mask. If you've been ignoring your fears, solitude will force you to hear their echoes louder than ever. That is why people run from it. They are not running from solitude itself. They are running from themselves. It is easier to live in constant company than to face the silence that tells the truth. But here is the paradox. The very thing people run from is the very thing that could save them. Solitude is the space where you can heal without distraction, where you can discover without noise, where you can break the cycle of dependence on others for your sense of self. Those who embrace solitude discover a depth of resilience that no crowd could ever give them. They learn to find peace in there when you are surrounded by people. It is easy to perform. You wear the right expression, you say the right words, you act in ways that fit the image you want to project. Most of life becomes a stage where you switch masks depending on who is watching. Around friends, you put on one face. Around colleagues, you wear another. Around family, you slip into yet another version of yourself. And over time, you get so good at switching masks that you forget which one is real. But solitude has no patience for masks. When you are truly alone, there is no reason to act, no script to follow, no audience to please. The faces you wear for the world fall away, and what remains is the raw truth. Solitude strips you bare until you are confronted with yourself as you really are. This is why solitude feels so uncomfortable for so many. Without the masks, they discover cracks they didn't want to see. The insecurities they bury beneath charm and humor rise to the surface. The doubts they silence with busyness echo loudly in their heads. The fears they hide behind smiles show up with brutal honesty. Solitude exposes all of it because there is no place to hide. It forces you to deal with the version of yourself that nobody else gets to see. And the more you have relied on masks in your daily life, the harder that confrontation becomes. The truth is, most people are terrified not of solitude itself, but of being left alone with the parts of themselves they've been running from. But this stripping away of masks is not a punishment. It is an invitation. It is an opportunity to finally meet yourself without pretense, to discover the person you are beneath the roles and the expectation. Solitude is like a mirror that doesn't lie. It reflects your strengths and your weaknesses with equal clarity. It shows you how much of your confidence is genuine and how much is borrowed from external approval. It reveals the difference between the values you say you live by and the values you actually follow when no one is watching. This kind of truth can be uncomfortable, but it is also the foundation of growth. You cannot build real strength on illusions, and solitude tears those illusions down so you can start from something real. The masks people wear may be useful in society, but they are dangerous when you begin to believe they are who you truly are. That's why so many people feel lost when they are alone. They have spent so much time performing that they no longer know themselves without the performance. Solitude forces them to ask questions they've avoided for years. What do I actually believe? What do I really want? Who am I without the validation of others? These questions can shake the ground beneath your feet, but they are also the questions that lead to authenticity. Without facing them, you will always be defined by the masks instead of the person underneath. There is a power that comes with dropping the masks. When you embrace solitude long enough to sit with your unfiltered self, you begin to see clearly where you are strong and where you are weak. You begin to recognize which parts of your identity are authentic and which are simply costumes stitched together by society's expectations. That kind of awareness is uncomfortable at first, but it becomes liberating. Because once you know who you are without the masks, you no longer need to hide behind them. You can step back into the world with confidence, knowing that your strength is not built on performance, but on truth. And it is only in solitude that you can do this work. Surrounded by others, you will always feel the pull to perform, to please, to shape yourself into what the situation requires. Alone, there is no such pressure. Alone, you are confronted by the reality you cannot escape. That confrontation is the crucible of authenticity. Solitude strips away the false layers until you are left with the essence of who you are. It may not be pretty, it may not be comfortable, but it is real. And from that reality, true strength, true self-respect, and true freedom can finally emerge. Solitude is not just about silence or absence of company. It is the ground where discipline and resilience are tested and forged. When you are surrounded by people, accountability is often external. Someone reminds you of your responsibilities. Someone notices if you show up late. Someone pushes you to keep working when you're tired. But when you are alone, there is no one there to set the standard for you. No one cares whether you wake up early or stay in bed. No one is checking if you're practicing your craft or wasting your time. It is in solitude that your true discipline is revealed, because discipline without an audience is the only discipline that matters. Doing the hard thing when nobody will know the difference. That is the kind of strength solitude demands. In solitude, every excuse is available. You can lie to yourself. You can quit early. You can slack off, and no one will know. But if you can resist those temptations and hold yourself to a higher standard anyway, you prove that your discipline is not dependent on fear of judgment or desire for praise. It comes from within. And that is the kind of discipline that lasts, because it does not rely on external pressure. It is easy to grind when a coach is watching, or when your peers are competing, or when a supervisor is tracking your output. It is much harder to grind when the only person who will ever know if you quit is you. That is where resilience is built, when you choose not to quit, even though no one would blame you if you did. Resilience in solitude also takes on a deeper meaning. In the outside world, resilience is often seen in how you handle public challenges, losing a competition, facing setbacks in business, or enduring criticism. But in solitude, resilience is about how you respond to the private battles that no one else sees. Can you keep moving forward when the silence amplifies your doubts? Can you continue to show up for yourself when it feels like no one else cares? Can you pick yourself back up after failure even when there's no encouragement waiting for you? Those private acts of resilience are invisible, but they are the foundation of unshakable strength. If you can endure solitude, you can endure anything. What solitude teaches is that self-respect cannot be borrowed. You can trick others into believing in your strength with appearances and